Dad, starting today, your entire pension will be transferred to my account, and you should find a dumpster to die in, said his daughter. I remained silent, but that night she heard a strange noise and looked out the window. What she saw made her fall silent forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The house looked smaller than I remembered. 3 years since I'd signed it over to Julia, and already the place felt like it belonged to someone else's memory. Her silver sedan sat in the driveway where I used to park my truck. Different curtains hung in the living room windows, geometric patterns instead of the florals my wife had chosen. I locked my car and walked up the path I'd laid brick by brick 20 years ago. Julia opened the door before I could knock. Dad, you're on time. Not a greeting, just an observation. She stepped aside without meeting my eyes. Traffic was light coming from Riverside, I said, following her inside. The furniture had changed. Modern pieces replaced the comfortable couch where we'd watched movies as a family. The walls were painted a cold gray. Only one thing remained from before, the family photo above the mantel. My wife's face smiled out from the frame, frozen in a moment when everything still made sense. Arnold sat at the dining table, phone in hand, thumbs moving across the screen. He didn't look up when I entered. Arnold, I said. He grunted, still didn't look up. Julia gestured toward a chair. Sit down, Dad. Dinner's almost ready. The meal was mechanical. Roasted chicken, vegetables, store-bought rolls. Julia served the plates with the efficiency of someone fulfilling an obligation. Arnold finally set his phone down, but spent the meal staring past me, jaw working on his food like he was chewing through something he resented. How's the apartment? Julia asked, cutting her chicken into precise squares. It's fine. Quiet. Still just the one bedroom? That's all I need. Arnold snorted. $800 a month for that shoebox. Ridiculous. I didn't respond. Took another bite. The chicken was dry. Julia refilled my water glass without asking if I wanted more. The silence stretched between us like something physical. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen, the scrape of Arnold's fork against his plate, the sound of my own breathing. After we finished, Julia stood and began clearing plates. I moved to help, but she waved me off. Stay seated, Dad. We need to talk. Something in her tone made my hands still on the table. Arnold leaned back in his chair, arms crossing over his chest. A smile played at the corner of his mouth. Not friendly, something else entirely. Julia returned from the kitchen with a folder. She set it on the table between us and sat down. Her fingers were steady as she opened it, pulled out several pages of official-looking documents. Dad, we need to discuss your financial situation. Her voice had gone flat, administrative. Your pension payments will be redirected to my account effective immediately. I've already processed the necessary paperwork. The words took a moment to land. When they did, I felt something shift in my chest. Not panic, not yet. Just a cold recognition that this dinner had never been about family. Julia, that's my pension. I earned it. I need it to live. What do you need it for? Arnold cut in, his voice sharp with contempt. You're not doing anything with your life anyway. We have actual expenses, real responsibilities. I looked at my daughter. $2,400 a month. That's my rent, my food, my utilities. That's what I survive on. Julia slid the paperwork across the table toward me. Forms with stamps and signatures. Authorization codes printed in neat rows. I have connections at social services, Dad. This is already done. The redirect starts next month. You can't just... This conversation is over. She folded her hands on top of the papers. The decision is made. Dad, find yourself a homeless shelter or a dumpster. Makes no difference to me anymore. I stared at her. The woman across from me had my daughter's face, my daughter's voice, but everything else had been carved away. Arnold's smirk widened. Neither of them looked away. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't rise. I simply looked at Julia one long moment, long enough for her to understand I was seeing her clearly now, and then I turned toward the door. My hand found the doorknob. Behind me, I heard Arnold's low laugh, Julia's sharp intake of breath, like she'd expected me to fight, to plead, to break down. I didn't turn around, didn't give them that satisfaction. The door closed quietly behind me. The porch light switched off before I reached the sidewalk. I walked to my car through the darkness, cool evening air turning my breath to vapor. My hands fished in my pocket for keys, found them, unlocked the door. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, engine off, looking back at the house. All the lights were on inside. Through the window, I could see Julia and Arnold moving around, already forgetting I'd been there. I started the car and drove. The drive back to Riverside took 20 minutes. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't need the noise. My mind was working, sorting through what had just happened, arranging the pieces into something I could understand. Julia had stolen my pension, not asked, not negotiated. Stolen it, with paperwork and official stamps, and the kind of confidence that comes from thinking you've already won. I parked in my usual spot at the apartment complex, third row back, under the oak tree. The building was quiet this time of night. Most of my neighbors were elderly, early to bed. I took the stairs to the second floor, unlocked my door, stepped into the small space I'd called home for 3 years. 1 bedroom, kitchenette, bathroom. Living area, barely big enough for a couch and television. The walls were beige, generic, temporary. Nothing like the house I'd built from the ground up. The house where I'd raised Julia, where my wife had died. The house I'd signed over to Julia 3 years ago because she'd said she needed help. Because I'd believed family meant something. I didn't turn on many lights, just the lamp by the couch, the small one over the kitchen counter. I went to the bedroom closet, pushed aside hanging shirts, knelt down, and spun the combination on the safe built into the floor. Right 23, left 16, right 41. The same numbers for 30 years. The lock disengaged with a solid click. Inside, everything was organized the way I'd always kept it. Cash in one envelope, birth certificates and social security cards in another, insurance policies, my wife's jewelry, and a folder labeled in my own handwriting, 1847 Oak Ridge property documents. I pulled it out, carried it to the kitchen table, and spread the contents in careful rows. Gift deed, Julia's name as grantee, my signature as grantor, all legal, all proper, dated 3 years ago. Below that, bank statements from the house account, utility transfer records, everything documenting the transfer of ownership. And beneath all of it, one more document, thicker paper, official county stamp, the deed of trust. I picked it up, held it under the kitchen light, and read the clause I'd written 3 years ago. The words came back to me slowly, then all at once. Sitting in Leonard Green's office, the attorney suggesting this protection, Julia saying it was unnecessary, me insisting quietly. Buyback provision, I read aloud to the empty apartment. Symbolic consideration of $100 upon material breach of care obligations. I'd told Julia it was just a formality. Standard procedure when transferring property within families. She'd signed it without reading carefully, eager to get the house, to have the asset in her name. She'd never known what that clause actually meant. I set the document down, looked at the clock on the microwave. 9:47. I had 48 hours, maybe less, before the bank processed Julia's authorization and locked me out of my own pension account. I needed to move faster than she expected. Coffee. I put on a pot, the familiar ritual steadying my hands, focusing my thoughts. While it brewed, I turned on my computer, the old desktop I'd kept from my property management days, and started searching. Texas property code, Travis County clerk procedures, expedited filing services, the cost of forcing a property sale, the timeline for eviction after reacquisition. The numbers started adding up on a legal pad, filing fees, attorney retainer, court costs if Julia contested, eviction service if she refused to leave. I had $15,000 in savings. It would be enough, barely. At midnight, I called a 24-hour legal information line. A woman answered, voice professional and detached. If a deed of trust includes a conditional buyback clause, and the condition is violated, what's the standard process for reacquisition in Travis County, Texas? She paused. I heard typing. You need to file with the county registrar, provide proof of breach, and execute the buyback transaction. Typically takes 3 to 5 business days for standard processing. What about expedited service? Available for an additional fee, can reduce processing to 24 hours, sometimes less. Thank you. I hung up, wrote down the information, checked it against what I'd found online. Everything aligned. The coffee was cold by 2 in the morning. I made another pot, drank it black, kept working. Browser tabs multiplied across my screen. Forms I'd need to file, documentation requirements, contact information for the county registrar's office, names of eviction services that could move quickly. By 4, I had a timeline written out in careful sequence. First, call Leonard Green at 8 when his office opened. Second, file the buyback deed at the county registrar with expedited processing. Third, arrange eviction service for the moment the deed recorded. Fourth, change my pension direct deposit before the bank processed Julia's authorization. Every step had to happen in order. Every piece had to fall exactly right. I sat back in my chair, rubbed my eyes. My body ached from sitting, from tension, from the weight of what I was about to do. But my mind was clear, sharper than it had been in years. This wasn't about the house. The house was just wood and brick, rooms and walls. This was about what Julia had said, how she'd looked at me when she said it. Find a dumpster, makes no difference. She'd forgotten something important. I'd spent 40 years in property management. I knew how to read contracts, how to find leverage, how to protect myself when someone tried to take what was mine. I'd built that protection into the deed 3 years ago, and Julia had never bothered to check. The window behind me began to lighten. Dawn coming, slow and gray. I checked the clock, 6:47. Too early to call Leonard yet. Offices didn't open until 8. I stood, stretched, felt my spine pop in 3 places. Went to the bathroom, turned on the shower, let the steam fill the small space. The hot water loosened muscles I'd forgotten were tight. When I stepped out, I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face I'd seen yesterday. Same gray hair, same lines around my eyes. But something had shifted behind them, something colder, more focused. I dressed in a clean shirt, khakis, the shoes I kept polished out of habit, made myself breakfast, eggs, toast, orange juice, ate slowly, methodically, like I was preparing for a long day. Because I was. At 7:45, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand and the timeline in front of me. I read through the steps again, checking each one, making sure I hadn't missed anything. At 8 exactly, I would call Leonard Green. I'd explain the situation in clear, unemotional terms. The gift deed, the deed of trust, the buyback clause Julia had violated. I'd ask him to meet me at 9, file the paperwork by 10, have the deed recorded by noon if we paid for expedited service. I rehearsed the conversation in my head. Every word mattered now. Every detail had to be precise. The clock on the microwave changed to 8:01. I dialed Leonard's number. Leonard answered on the second ring. "Morton Scott, is that really you?" His voice carried surprise and warmth. "Must be 3 years since we last talked." "4 years, Leonard. I need your help. Today. Can you meet me at your office in an hour?" The warmth dimmed, replaced by professional focus. "What's the situation?" "Property issue. I need to execute a buyback clause. I can pay cash." A pause. "How urgent are we talking?" "I need the deed recorded by end of business today." "That's..." He stopped. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted into the tone I remembered from our business days together, the one he used when time was money. "I can make that work. Come to the office at 9:30. Bring all your documentation." I hung up, grabbed my jacket, my wallet, the folder with the property documents. The bank opened at 8:30. I had time. The drive to my bank took 12 minutes. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few early morning customers. Inside, the institutional smell of recycled air and carpet cleaner. I walked to a teller window, pulled out a withdrawal slip, and wrote, 15,000 GARs. The teller, a young woman with careful makeup, looked at the amount and then at me. "Mr. Scott, that's your entire savings account balance. Are you sure you need it all in cash? We could arrange a wire transfer or cashier's check if..." "Cash! Hundreds, please." She hesitated. "Sir, for your protection, I should mention that large cash withdrawals can sometimes indicate, 'I'm purchasing property. I need cash for the transaction. Please process the withdrawal.'" Her fingers moved across her keyboard. The printer behind her whirred. She counted out 150 bills by machine, then recounted them by hand, slipped them into a bank envelope, sealed it, handed it across the counter. "Thank you," I said. The weight of $15,000 felt significant in my inside jacket pocket. I walked back to my car, locked the doors, sat for a moment, feeling that weight against my ribs. My entire life savings. Everything I'd managed to keep after my wife's hospital bills, after the funeral, after 3 years of careful living on a pension that barely covered rent and food. I started the engine and drove toward downtown Austin. Leonard's office occupied the 3rd floor of an older building on 6th Street. I took the elevator up, stepped into a hallway with worn carpet and fluorescent lighting. The frosted glass door at the end still read, "Leonard Green, Attorney at Law," in gold letters that had started to peel at the edges. The receptionist looked up when I entered. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Scott, is that you?" "Hello, Patricia. Been a while. I'll tell Leonard you're here." She picked up her phone, pressed a button. "Mr. Green, Morton Scott is here for his 9:30. She listened, nodded, hung up. "Go right in." Leonard's office hadn't changed much. Same wood-paneled walls, same certificates and law degrees in matching frames, same enormous desk that had probably been expensive 30 years ago. Leonard stood from behind it, extended his hand. His hair had gone grayer, his middle thicker, but his handshake was firm. "Morton, good to see you. Sit." I sat, pulled out the folder, laid the deed of trust on his desk. "I need you to execute a buyback under this clause. Today. I can pay cash." Leonard picked up the document, settled reading glasses onto his nose. He read slowly, his finger following the text line by line. When he reached the buyback provision, his eyebrows rose. He read it again, then he looked at me over his glasses. "Morton, this is elegant work. Who drafted this provision for you?" "You did. 4 years ago, when I transferred the house to my daughter." His eyes went back to the document. "I remember now. You insisted on this protection clause. Your daughter didn't think it was necessary." He set the paper down. "This is airtight. Conditional buyback upon material breach of care obligations. The consideration is symbolic, $100. Did Julia know about this clause?" "She knew I gave her the house. She didn't read the fine print. Neither did her husband." Leonard leaned back in his chair. "What happened, Morton?" "They stole my pension, arranged to have the payments redirected to their account, told me to find a homeless shelter or a dumpster. They didn't care which." His expression hardened. "When?" "Last night." "You have proof of the breach?" I pulled out my phone, opened my voice memo app, played the recording I'd made. Julia's voice, clinical and cold. "Your pension payments will be redirected to my account effective immediately. Arnold's contemptuous addition? What do you need it for? You're not doing anything with your life anyway." Julia's final words, "Find yourself a homeless shelter or a dumpster. Makes no difference to me anymore." I'd set my phone to record before entering the house. Old habit from business negotiations. Document everything. Leonard listened, his jaw tight. When it finished, he took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. "That's your daughter saying those things?" "That was my daughter." He put his glasses back on. "All right, here's what we need to do. We file the buyback deed with Travis County immediately. We need to move fast. Once she discovers what we're doing, she could file for an injunction to stop the process. If we get this registered before she knows, the property is yours and she'll have to sue to challenge, which she'll lose because this contract is valid. How fast can we move? Standard processing is 3 business days, but we can request expedited service." He picked up his phone, dialed. "Sharon, Leonard Green, I need to verify your expedited registration service is available today." He listened. "Excellent. We'll be there before noon." He hung up. "They can do it. $500 extra, completion by 4 p.m. I pulled the bank envelope from my jacket, counted out $3,500 bills, slid them across the desk. $3,000 for your services, $500 for the expedited filing." Leonard looked at the cash, then at me. "Morton, are you sure about this? That's a significant amount for—" "I'm sure." He nodded slowly, collected the bills, put them in his desk drawer, pressed the intercom button. "Patricia, we need notary service immediately. Call Marcus, tell him I need him here in 20 minutes. The next hour moved with the precision of a military operation. Marcus arrived, witnessed my signature on 6 different copies of the buyback deed. Patricia printed everything on legal paper, organized it into folders. Leonard made phone calls, confirmed our appointment at the county clerk's office, arranged for the notarized documents to be hand-delivered to the recorder's desk. At 11:15, we walked out of the building into warm April sunlight. Leonard drove, a practical sedan with coffee stains on the cup holders and legal briefs scattered across the back seat. I sat in the passenger seat with the folder on my lap, feeling the weight of what we were about to do. "She's going to fight this," Leonard said, navigating through midday traffic. "Even though she'll lose, she'll make it ugly. Let her fight." "You're different than I remember, Morton. Harder." "She made me different." We pulled into the parking structure next to the Travis County Government Complex. Inside, the building hummed with bureaucratic activity. People in line at various windows, clerks processing forms, the ambient sound of printers and keyboards and official stamps hitting paper. Leonard knew which window to approach. The clerk, a middle-aged man with reading glasses on a chain, examined our documents with practiced efficiency. "Buyback provision on a gift deed," he said, half to himself. "Don't see many of these. Everything looks in order. Standard processing is 3 business days. We can expedite for $500. Completion by 4 p.m. today if we file before noon." I was already pulling out my wallet. "Do it," I said. The clerk accepted the cash, wrote a receipt, stamped our copies. "Have a seat. We'll call you when it's ready." The waiting area had uncomfortable plastic chairs arranged in rows. Leonard suggested getting lunch. I declined, sat where I could see the clerk's desk, watching the progress of our paperwork through the system. Forms passing from desk to desk, computer entries being made, the slow machinery of government processing converting my $100 and Julia's betrayal into legal reality. Leonard sat beside me, working on his phone, occasionally glancing up to check the status. At 3:45, the clerk called my name. Leonard and I approached the window together. "All processed, Mr. Scott." The clerk handed me a folder containing certified copies of the deed, each one stamped and sealed. "As of 4:07 p.m. today, you are the registered owner of property at 1847 Oak Ridge Drive. Congratulations." I took the folder. The paper felt ordinary, just documents, but they represented something more: justice, reclamation, the correction of a profound wrong. Outside, Leonard walked me to my car. "I should buy you dinner, celebrate the win." "I appreciate it, Leonard, but I have more work to do tonight." We shook hands on the sidewalk. Leonard headed toward his sedan, pulling out his keys. I stood by my car, folder in one hand, phone in the other, 3 calls to make before evening. The sun still high in the April sky. Time enough. I pulled up my contacts, found the first number, let my finger hover over the dial button. Then I pressed it. "Yes," I said when someone answered. "I need emergency eviction assistance. Tonight." The eviction service representative asked me to hold. I heard typing, the click of a mouse, the professional multitasking of someone used to urgent requests. "Mr. Scott, still there?" "I'm here. Can you come to our office? I need to review your documentation before we can proceed. We're at 2847 South Congress. How soon can you be here?" 30 minutes. See you then." I needed coffee and a place to make more calls. Found a shop 2 blocks away, ordered black coffee I didn't really want, took a corner table away from the afternoon crowd, pulled out my legal pad, and started working through my list. Locksmith first. I called 3 companies before I found one willing to do emergency evening service. Emergency recce for a 3-bedroom home, all exterior doors. The dispatcher's voice was professionally bored. "You're looking at $500 including after-hours premium. We can have a technician there within 2 hours of your call. I need you there at 6:30 p.m. Can you do that? Address, 1847 Oak Ridge Drive." Typing sounds. "Yeah, we can make that work. Payment due when service is completed. Cash acceptable? Cash works." Next call, moving company. I needed labor and a truck, but not for moving furniture somewhere else. Just loading it and putting it outside. Labor and truck for loading personal property, evening service. The coordinator sounded young, probably working his way through college. $800 for 2 workers in 3 hours. Where should they transport the items? "Just the front lawn. That'll be sufficient." A pause. "You want us to move furniture from inside a house to the front lawn?" "That's correct." Okay. That's unusual, but we can do it." "What time?" 6:30 p.m., 1847 Oak Ridge Drive." "Got it. Cash or card?" "Cash." I checked my watch. 4:25, finished the coffee, left cash on the table, drove south on Congress. The eviction service office occupied a suite in a strip mall between a tax preparation business and a bail bondsman. The sign on the door read, Rapid Property Recovery Services. Inside, the woman behind the desk looked like she'd seen everything twice. Mid-40s, business suit, no-nonsense expression. Her nameplate read, Sandra Michaels, Client Services Manager. Mr. Scott? That's right. Have a seat. Let me see your documentation. I handed her the folder. She examined each document carefully. The ownership certificate from the county clerk with its fresh timestamp, the original deed of trust with the buyback clause, the recorded gift deed from 4 years ago. She made notes on a tablet while she read. All right, she said finally. This is clear cut. You're the registered property owner as of 4:07 p.m. today. Current occupants have no lease agreement with you. Under Texas Property Code, this qualifies for immediate eviction without notice. We can have deputies and our team there by 6:30 p.m. That works. They should be home from work by then. I want this done tonight. She pulled out a contract, filled in the relevant information, slid it across the desk. Our fee is $4,000. That includes coordination with the sheriff's department, 2 deputies on site for security, our recovery team to oversee the removal of occupants, and documentation of the entire process for legal purposes. I counted out $4,000 bills, laid them in neat stacks on her desk. Sandra didn't blink. Just collected the money, wrote a receipt, had me sign the contract. We'll meet you at the property at 6:30. Do not approach the occupants before we arrive. Let us handle everything. Understood. Back in my car, I called Leonard. How'd the eviction service meeting go? He asked. They'll be there at 6:30. I have locksmith and movers coming at the same time. Morton, are you sure about the timing? You could give them a few days to find somewhere to go. The reasonable suggestion hung in the air between us. Part of me understood it. Part of me remembered Leonard was a decent man who believed in proportional responses. But that part was smaller now, quieter. They gave me a dumpster, Leonard. They get the same courtesy they showed me. None. Silence on his end. Then, all right, call me if you need anything else. I drove toward Oak Ridge Drive, the street where I had lived for 20 years, where I had raised Julia, where my wife had died, where Julia now lived in the house I'd built, spending the money she'd stolen, sleeping in bedrooms she had no right to occupy. I found a diner 3 blocks from the house, parked where I had a clear view down the street, went inside, took a booth by the window, ordered more coffee I wouldn't drink. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, asked if I wanted anything to eat. Just the coffee, thank you. Let me know if you change your mind, hun. I watched the empty driveway through the window. Julia and Arnold both worked regular hours. She at a marketing firm, he at some tech company. They'd be home by 6:15 at the latest. Probably tired from their day. Probably pleased with themselves for stealing my pension. Probably already planning how to spend money that didn't belong to them. My phone buzzed. Text from Sandra at the eviction service. Team en route, ETA 6:25. I checked the list on my legal pad one more time. Eviction service confirmed. Locksmith confirmed. Moving company confirmed. Everyone converging on the house at 6:30. The timing had to be precise. I wanted all the pieces in place before Julia and Arnold arrived, but not so early that neighbors got concerned and called them. The waitress refilled my coffee. I thanked her, kept my eyes on that driveway. My phone buzzed again. Leonard. Drafted emergency legal response in case Julia tries anything tonight. Standing by if you need me. I texted back, thank you. At 6:15, I paid my tab, left a $20 tip on a $7 check. The waitress looked surprised. You have a good evening now, she said. I intend to. I walked to my car, drove slowly toward the house, parked across the street with a clear view of the front door. The neighborhood looked peaceful in the early evening light. Kids playing basketball 3 houses down, someone mowing their lawn. Normal suburban life continuing while I prepared to detonate a bomb in the middle of it. At 6:25, the locksmith's van pulled up. White vehicle with AAA security services in blue letters on the side. A technician got out, tool bag in hand. I walked over. You Morton Scott? That's me. You want all exterior locks rekeyed? Every single one. Start with the back door. I want that done first. He nodded, headed around the side of the house. I returned to my car, watched the street. 6:27. The eviction service truck arrived, unmarked white van, Sandra Michaels, and another team member inside. They parked behind the locksmith, stepped out, approached my car. Sandra knocked on my window. I rolled it down. "Deputies are 2 minutes out," she said. "Moving truck? Should be here any moment." As if on cue, a small moving truck turned onto the street, followed by a sheriff's department cruiser. The moving company truck parked. 2 young men got out. The deputy cruiser parked behind them. 2 deputies emerged, one speaking into his radio. All the pieces on the board, all the players in position. I stepped out of my car, and Julia's silver sedan turned onto the street. She hadn't seen the vehicles yet, hadn't seen me. The deputy cruiser blocked her view of the house from this angle. She was probably thinking about dinner, about what to watch on television, about anything except the fact that her entire world was about to collapse. In 30 seconds, she would. Julia's sedan slowed as it approached the house. I watched her profile through the windshield, still unaware, still comfortable in her stolen security. Then her head turned. She saw the vehicles. Her brake lights flared, too late to process it now. She'd understand soon enough. But that wasn't how it happened. The call had come 6 hours earlier, while I sat in the diner finalizing my afternoon logistics. My phone buzzed, Julia's name on the screen. I took a breath, accepted the call. "What have you done?" Her voice was shrill, panicked. Background noise suggested she was somewhere public. Her office, probably. Someone had contacted her. "Hello, Julia?" "Don't hello, Julia me. The bank called me. You emptied your account. $15,000. That was supposed to be ours. We have bills. We have debts. We were counting on that money." I kept my voice level, conversational. "That money was always mine, Julia. Every dollar I saved over 40 years of work. And the house is mine, too." Silence, then laughter. Genuine, amused laughter. "The house? Dad, you gave us the house 3 years ago. Are you feeling okay? Maybe you need to see a doctor. You're not making sense." "I'm making perfect sense. You'll understand tonight." "Arnold's right." Her tone shifted from amused to dismissive. "You've become a confused old man. Don't call me again with this nonsense." The line went dead. I set my phone face down on the table, sat for a moment, letting her words settle. Senile fool, confused old man. The casual cruelty of someone who'd already written off her father as irrelevant. I signaled the waitress for my check. The afternoon moved with mechanical precision. Back to my apartment to collect the document folder one more time, verify everything was in order. Calls to Sandra at the eviction service, to the locksmith, to the moving company, confirming arrival times, coordinating positions, ensuring no delays. At 5:30, I drove across Austin toward Oak Ridge Drive. Traffic was heavy with people heading home from work. I took surface streets, avoiding the highway, keeping my speed exactly at the limit. No reason to rush. Everything was timed. I arrived at the house at 6, parked across the street where Julia would see my car immediately when she pulled in. Sat behind the wheel, engine off, watching the familiar structure in the golden evening light. The house I'd built. The house where I'd raised my daughter. The house where my wife had spent her final months. The house Julia had taken and then used as leverage to destroy me. The first vehicle appeared at 6:15. Sandra's eviction service van, white and unmarked. She parked behind me, got out, approached my window. "Ready, Mr. Scott?" "Ready." The deputy sheriff cruiser arrived next. 2 officers, both professional and alert. The older one, 40-ish, graying at the temples, introduced himself as Deputy Martinez. His partner, younger and quiet, was Deputy Chen. "Mr. Scott," Martinez extended his hand. I shook it. "We'll need to verify your documentation before we proceed." I handed him the folder, county registration receipt, ownership certificate, eviction notice, copy of the original deed of trust. He examined each document carefully while Chen called in to verify the property registration number. "Everything checks out," Martinez said, returning the folder. "Current occupants have no lease agreement with you?" "Correct. They're family members who were allowed to reside in the property under a verbal care agreement. That agreement was violated." He nodded. "Once we're inside, we maintain order and ensure the eviction proceeds legally. We don't take sides, don't get involved in family disputes. Our job is keeping everyone safe. Understood?" "Understood." Leonard arrived in his sedan, followed by the locksmith van and the moving truck. The The convoy assembled on the quiet residential street like pieces of a precisely planned operation. Neighbors had started noticing, curtains moving in windows, someone standing on a porch 2 houses down. Let them watch. I walked to my front door, the group filing in behind me. My key slid into the lock, the same lock I'd installed 15 years ago when we first moved in. The mechanism turned smooth, the door swung open. I stepped across the threshold. The smell hit me first. Different. Julia's floral air freshener, sharp and synthetic. Cooking odors I didn't recognize. The furniture had changed, modern pieces replacing what my wife and I had chosen together. The walls were painted that cold gray I'd noticed before. But it was my house. Legally, officially mine. "Gentlemen," Leonard said to the workers, his voice carrying authority. "You'll be removing personal property belonging to Julia Scott Adams and Arnold Adams. Nothing belonging to Mr. Scott is to be touched. If you're uncertain about an item, ask first." The workers nodded, pulled on work gloves, headed upstairs. "Mr. Scott?" The locksmith held up his toolkit. "I'll start with the front door, work my way around. Should take about 90 minutes for all exterior locks." "Do it." Martinez and Chen positioned themselves, Chen outside on the porch, Martinez inside near the entrance. Their presence was solid, official, undeniable. I stood in the foyer, listening to drawers opening upstairs, footsteps moving through rooms, the sound of my house being reclaimed inch by inch. The locksmith knelt at the front door, his drill whirring as he removed the first cylinder. The old lock dropped into his bucket with a metallic clank. He fitted a new cylinder, tested it, handed me a fresh key. "One down," he said. The first moving workers descended the stairs, carrying armloads of clothing on hangers. Arnold's work shirts, Julia's dresses. They carried them out to the truck, returned for more. A lamp I recognized, one my wife had picked out at an estate sale. The workers handled it carefully, set it on the truck bed. More clothes, shoes in boxes. The flat-screen TV Julia and Arnold had mounted above the fireplace. Everything that was theirs, being extracted from what was mine. Leonard stood beside me, reviewing paperwork, occasionally directing workers toward specific rooms. The locksmith moved to the back door, his drill whirring again. Another cylinder out, another fresh key in my hand. The pile on the front lawn grew, furniture, boxes, bags of clothing. The workers arranged it with surprising care, not dumped, but stacked neatly near the gate. Professional courtesy, even in an eviction. The spring evening settled into dusk. Porch lights came on automatically. The streetlight at the corner flickered to life. Time moved forward with inevitable momentum. I checked my phone. 7:23. Julia and Arnold should arrive within the next 30 minutes, maybe sooner. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. I walked to the front window, looked out at the street, the growing pile of belongings on the lawn, the official vehicles parked like sentries. They would come around the corner any minute now. When they did, their entire world would change in an instant. At 7:32, I heard an engine. Arnold's sedan appeared at the end of the street, approaching at normal speed, still unsuspecting. The car slowed as it neared the driveway. Even from inside, I could see Julia lean forward in the passenger seat, her head turning toward the house. The brake lights flared red. The car stopped abruptly, half in the driveway, half still in the street. Julia's door opened first. She stepped out slowly, her purse sliding off her shoulder, catching on her elbow. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Arnold emerged from the driver's side a second later. His door flung wide, his foot catching on the seatbelt as he lurched out. His finger came up, pointing at the nearest worker. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice carried across the lawn, loud and aggressive. "That's our furniture. Those are our belongings. Stop right now or I'm calling the police." The worker, a young man with tattooed forearms, didn't even pause, just kept loading boxes into the truck. "Sir, we're following the property owner's instructions. If you have questions, speak with the deputies." Arnold's head swiveled. His eyes found me standing by the entrance. "You!" He started toward me, fingers still extended. "What is this? What did you do, you crazy old—" Deputy Martinez stepped into his path. "Sir, I need you to calm down. This is a legal eviction. Mr. Morton Scott is the registered property owner. You and Ms. Adams are being removed from the premises." Arnold stopped. His finger dropped. What are you talking about? This is our house." Julia finally found her voice. It came out weak, uncertain. That's not possible. This is our house. Dad gave it to us 3 years ago. Leonard stepped forward, producing the folder. Ms. Adams, your father executed a conditional gift deed with a buyback provision. That provision was activated yesterday due to material breach of the care agreement. The property was legally retransferred to Mr. Scott and registered with Travis County at 4:07 p.m. yesterday afternoon. He opened the folder, showed her the county clerk's stamp, the registration receipt. Julia stared at the documents without taking them. I don't understand. The buyback clause was triggered when you violated the terms of your father's residency agreement, Leonard continued. Your father repurchased the property for the symbolic consideration specified in the original deed, $100. It's all legal and properly recorded. Arnold's face had gone from red to pale. You can't just... There are tenant rights. You have to give notice. 30 days minimum. Not when there's no lease, Martinez said. You were residing here based on a verbal family agreement. That agreement was terminated. As the property owner, Mr. Scott has every right to reclaim his home. Julia's eyes found mine, locked on, searching for something, mercy, explanation, some sign of the father she thought she knew. She found none of it. Dad, her voice cracked. Daddy, what are you doing? This is our home. I met her gaze without flinching. You told me to find a dumpster, Julia. I found something better. I found my house. Her face crumpled, not crying yet, but close. We didn't mean... You meant every word. My voice was flat, final. You stole my pension. You told me you didn't care if I lived in a shelter or a dumpster. You laughed when I said the house was mine, called me senile, a confused old man. The pension was a mistake, she said quickly. We can fix that. We'll reverse the transfer. But Dad, please, this is where we live. We have nowhere else to go. Neither did I. Arnold's phone was out now, his thumbs moving across the screen. I'm calling our lawyer. This is illegal. There are procedures. You can't just throw people out on the street. Call whoever you want, Leonard said calmly. Every action we've taken today follows Texas property code. Mr. Scott's ownership is recorded and certified. The eviction is legal. Your lawyer will tell you the same thing. Another load came out the front door. Arnold's golf clubs, a suitcase, more bags of clothing. The workers maneuvered past us like we weren't there, adding to the pile on the lawn. Julia watched them, her professional composure completely shattered. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident woman who'd served me stolen dinner in my own house had been replaced by someone lost and disoriented. Where are we supposed to go? She asked, the question directed at no one in particular. I didn't answer, just watched as the locksmith emerged from the house, approach me with 3 more keys. All exterior locks changed, Mr. Scott. Front door, back door, side door, garage. You're good to go. I took the keys, felt their weight in my palm. Fresh metal, new cuts, locks Julia and Arnold would never have access to. Thank you. Deputy Chen spoke for the first time, addressing Julia and Arnold. You folks need to collect your belongings from the lawn and vacate the premises. You have 2 hours to remove everything. After that, anything remaining becomes abandoned property. 2 hours? Arnold's voice pitched upward. We can't move everything in 2 hours. We don't even have anywhere to take it. That's not our concern, Martinez said, not unkindly. You can rent storage, arrange for a moving company, ask friends for help. But you need to clear the property. Julia looked at the pile on the lawn, their entire life together exposed under the streetlight. Neighbors were definitely watching now. 3 people stood on porches across the street. Someone was recording on their phone. The public humiliation of it. The complete reversal. This morning, they'd owned a house and had access to my pension. Tonight, they owned nothing but what sat on that lawn, and they had 2 hours to figure out where it would go. Arnold, Julia said quietly. Call your brother, see if he can help. Arnold's jaw clenched. Michael lives in San Antonio. He can't... Call him. He stepped away, phone pressed to his ear, voice urgent but too quiet to hear. Julia stood alone on the driveway, her eyes still on me. I'm sorry, she whispered. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But Dad, please, don't do this. I could have said many things, could have reminded her of her exact words from last night, could have detailed every cruel choice that led to this moment, could have explained that justice isn't kind, it's just. Instead, I said nothing, just held her gaze until she looked away. Leonard touched my shoulder. "Morton, we should let the deputies handle this. The work here is done." He was right. The locks were changed, the eviction was executed, my house was legally and physically mine again. I turned to Martinez. "I'll be inside. Call me if you need anything." "Will do, Mr. Scott." I walked past Julia, past Arnold still on his phone, past the pile of their belongings, and entered my house. My key in my new lock, the door closing behind me, the solid click of the deadbolt engaging. Inside, the workers were finishing up, checking rooms to make sure they'd removed everything that belonged to the former occupants. Leonard followed me in, closed the door, leaned against it. "That was harder than I expected," he said quietly. I looked at him. "For them, maybe." Outside, I heard Arnold's voice rising, arguing with whoever he'd called. Julia's softer responses, the deputies maintaining their professional distance. Arnold's thumb moved across his phone screen, calling someone. A lawyer, probably. Let him try. Every move I'd made was legal, documented, final. But they didn't know that yet. They were about to learn. Deputy Martinez stepped forward, positioning himself between the two groups. His partner Chen moved closer to Arnold, not threatening, just ready. "Mr. Adams, Ms. Adams," Martinez said, his voice carrying official weight. "I'm Deputy Martinez. The property at 1847 Oak Ridge Drive is legally owned by Morton Scott as of 4:07 p.m. on April 2, 2025, per Travis County records. You are currently residing here without a lease agreement or ownership rights. This constitutes trespassing. You are required to vacate immediately." Arnold's face flushed darker. "That's insane. This is our house. He gave it to us 3 years ago. We have the deed, the gift deed." He lunged toward me, 2 steps, his fist starting to curl. Chen's hand appeared on Arnold's chest. Firm pressure. Arnold stopped, forced back. His face registered shock, first at being physically restrained, then at his own powerlessness. "Sir, you need to stay back," Chen said quietly. Leonard stepped forward, unfolding a document from his folder. "Mr. Adams, the gift deed you reference was conditional." He held up the paper, pointed with his pen to a specific paragraph. "Here is the deed of trust, filed simultaneously with the gift deed, Section 4, Paragraph 2. He read aloud, "Grantor reserves the right to reacquire the property for the sum of $100 upon material breach of the care and support agreement. That breach occurred. Mr. Scott exercised his legal right." "There was no written agreement," Arnold's voice pitched higher. "You can't enforce something that wasn't written down. Texas law recognizes verbal agreements, particularly in family arrangements." Leonard's tone remained conversational, almost friendly. "The breach is documented through your wife's unauthorized redirection of Mr. Scott's pension and your verbal statements demanding he vacate. Multiple witnesses can attest to the care agreement's terms." Julia had been silent through this exchange, her eyes moving from Leonard's document to me and back again. I watched understanding dawn on her face, slowly, then all at once. Her hand reached out, steadied herself against the car door. "Dad," her voice came out thin, uncertain. "Daddy, what did you do? This can't be happening." I met her eyes, held her gaze, spoke for the first time since arriving at the house. "I did what you suggested, Julia. You told me to find a dumpster or a shelter. I found something better. I found my house, the one I built, the one I paid for, the one you tried to steal." Her face crumpled, not crying yet, but close. Fear flickered in her eyes, genuine fear, different from the shock and anger of moments before. She was beginning to calculate consequences: loss of home, financial exposure, her pension fraud. "But you gave us—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I gave you a conditional gift," I said. "You violated the conditions. The contract was clear. You just didn't bother to read it." Arnold opened his mouth, probably to launch into another protest, another threat, another useless attempt to intimidate or manipulate. Leonard raised his hand. "Mr. Adams, I strongly suggest you focus on collecting your belongings and finding somewhere to stay tonight. Any legal challenge you attempt will fail, and pursuing one will only waste money you apparently don't have." Julia turned to Arnold, whispered something I couldn't hear. He shook his head violently. She whispered again, more urgently, her hand gripping his arm. He pulled away, but she didn't let go. Whispered a third time. Finally, he nodded, reluctantly, angrily, but he nodded. Julia took a shaky breath, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, turned back to face me. When she spoke, her voice was small, broken. "Please, just give us time, a week, a few days. We have nowhere to go." Behind her, on the lawn, the pile of their belongings sat under the streetlight. Inside the house, workers were still moving through rooms, carrying out what remained. The locksmith was testing the new deadbolt on the front door, the metallic click audible in the quiet street. I looked at my daughter, saw her there on the edge of tears, begging for mercy, and remembered sitting at her dinner table less than 24 hours ago, hearing her cold voice tell me to find a dumpster. My mouth opened to respond. Arnold's posture shifted, his shoulders squared, his voice rose, theatrical and loud, pitched to carry across the street where neighbors stood watching. "Look at this! Look what this man is doing!" He spread his arms wide, turning slightly toward the audience on their porches. Throwing his own daughter out on the street, his own flesh and blood. What kind of father does this? What kind of person? A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. No one came to his defense. The presence of 2 sheriff's deputies in uniform legitimized everything happening here, made it official rather than personal. Julia's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees on the driveway, hands clasping together in front of her chest. Tears streamed down her face. "Daddy, please." Her voice broke on the words. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just give us a week, 5 days, anything. We have nowhere to go. Please, I'm begging you." I looked down at her. The symmetry of it struck me. The reversal of power. The daughter who'd told me to find a dumpster now on her knees, begging for shelter. "You told me to find a dumpster, Julia." My voice came out quiet but clear. "You said it made no difference whether I lived in a shelter or died on the street. You stole my pension. You wanted to leave me with nothing. Where was your mercy then?" "I didn't mean it. I was angry. I was stressed. We have debts. I cut her off. "You wanted my money. You wanted my house. You wanted to leave me with nothing." I paused, let the words settle. "Now you have exactly what you deserve." Julia's face went pale. She stayed on her knees, swaying slightly, but no more words came out. Martinez stepped forward. "Ms. Adams, Mr. Adams, you have 30 minutes to collect essential personal items from inside. Identification, medications, important documents, 1 change of clothes each. After that, this property is off limits to you. Do you understand?" Arnold helped Julia to her feet. She leaned against him, her face blank with shock. They moved toward the house like people walking through a dream, climbing the porch steps slowly. The door closed behind them. I stayed outside, listened to the sounds of their panic, drawers slamming, closet doors banging, urgent whispers that sometimes rose into sharp exchanges. The noise of people who'd had everything and now had 30 minutes to salvage what they could carry. Martinez checked his watch. 20 minutes left, he called toward the house. The sounds intensified, footsteps running up and down stairs, something heavy being dragged across the floor. More argument, Arnold's voice sharp with blame, Julia's responding with desperate defense. At 28 minutes, they emerged. Arnold carried 2 large suitcases and a laptop bag. Julia had a smaller suitcase and her purse, her arms wrapped around a cardboard box of papers. Their faces were flushed, their breathing heavy. Arnold made 3 more trips, grabbing a garment bag, a box of Julia's work files, his golf clubs. Each time he passed me, his jaw clenched tighter. On his final trip to the car, he stopped, turned to face me, his hands empty now, his posture straightening into something like defiance. "We're suing," he said. "You hear me? We're getting a lawyer. This whole thing is fraud. You manipulated an old man. Leonard interrupted, his voice cold and precise. "Mr. Adams, everything we've done is completely legal and documented. However, I should mention that your wife's forgery of Social Security pension and documents is a federal crime." Arnold froze. "What? If Mr. Scott chooses to file a criminal complaint, Ms. Adams faces up to 10 years in federal prison." Leonard let that sink in. "I'd strongly advise you to accept this situation quietly and move on. She didn't forge anything. She used her position at a law firm to access restricted databases and create fraudulent redirect orders without Mr. Scott's knowledge or consent. That's forgery and fraud." Leonard's expression didn't change. I suggest you focus on finding housing rather than threatening litigation. The color drained from Arnold's face. He looked at Julia, who stood frozen by the passenger door, the box of papers still in her arms. "Get in the car," he said quietly. She didn't move, just stared at me, searching my face for something. Forgiveness, compassion, recognition of the father she thought I was. She found none of it. Arnold called her name, sharper this time. "Julia, get in the car." She loaded the box into the back seat, climbed into the passenger side, sat with her hands in her lap, her face turned toward the window, but her eyes on the house. Arnold walked around to the driver's side, opened the door, paused, looked back at the pile of belongings still on the lawn, most of their furniture, boxes of clothes, kitchen items, everything they couldn't fit in the car. "What about the rest?" he asked Martinez. "You have until midnight to arrange for storage or removal. After that, it becomes abandoned property." Arnold got in the car, started the engine. The headlights came on, illuminating the pile on the lawn, the house beyond. Julia turned her head, looked directly at me one last time through the window. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear the words, but they might have been, "I'm sorry," or maybe just "goodbye." Arnold put the car in reverse, backed out of the driveway with jerky, angry movements. The car straightened, shifted into drive, rolled forward down the street. I watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner. The street fell quiet. The neighbors began retreating into their houses, the show over. Martinez and Chen walked to their cruiser, started packing up their equipment. Leonard touched my shoulder briefly, said nothing. I turned and looked at my house, standing solid and real in the evening light. The workers had finished. The locks were changed. Everything that was mine had been returned to me. The deputies finished their paperwork, closed their notebooks, returned to their cruiser. Martinez nodded to me as he passed. "Have a good evening, Mr. Scott." "Thank you, Deputy." Their taillights joined the fading red of Julia's car, both disappearing in different directions into the Austin evening. The locksmith packed his tools, tested each lock one final time. He approached me with 4 keys on a new ring, the metal bright and unscratched. "Best locks on the market, Mr. Scott. New keys, new cylinders. No one gets in without your permission. You're secure." I took the keys, felt their weight. "Thank you. What do I owe you?" $500 like we discussed. I counted out the bills from my wallet, handed them over. He counted them once, nodded, shook my hand. "Pleasure doing business with you." The moving company workers were already in their truck, engine idling. I walked over, paid them their $800. They drove off without ceremony, just another job completed. Sandra from the eviction service approached last. "Everything went smoothly, Mr. Scott. Your paperwork is all in order. If Ms. Adams attempts to return or causes any trouble, call the police and reference case number E2547. It's all documented." I handed her the remaining cash, $4,000 that represented the most expensive but necessary part of this entire operation. She tucked it into her professional folder, extended her hand. "Good luck to you. Thank you for your help." Her van pulled away, leaving just Leonard's sedan at the curb and my car across the street. The pile of Julia and Arnold's belongings still sat on the lawn, illuminated by the streetlight. Their problem now, not mine. They had until midnight to arrange storage or removal. Leonard gathered his documents, organized them into his briefcase with practiced efficiency. He turned to me, genuine respect in his expression. "Good work, Morton. Clean, legal, decisive. Everything a property reclamation should be." He handed me his card. "If you need anything else, you have my number." "Thank you, Leonard. I couldn't have done this without you. What do I owe you for today?" "We settled on $3,000 for the transaction. Today's supervision is included. You've paid enough." We shook hands. He walked to his car, started the engine, gave a small wave. Then he was gone too. I stood alone on my front lawn. The street had returned to its usual quiet. Porch lights glowed from neighboring houses. The family 3 doors down had gone inside. Mrs. Patterson's curtains were drawn. The show was over. I walked up my porch steps, key in hand. My key, my porch, my house. The lock turned smooth. The door swung open. I stepped across the threshold and closed the door behind me. The quiet was profound. Not the oppressive silence of an empty house, but the peaceful stillness of a space reclaimed. I walked through the rooms slowly, a methodical tour of restoration. The living room. My leather armchair still sat by the window where it had always been. Julia hadn't had time to move it, or maybe she'd kept it because it was comfortable. The bookshelf I'd built stood against the wall, though most of the books were gone. Small losses, easily replaced. The kitchen, fewer dishes in the cabinets. My good pots and pans still hung from their hooks. The counter I'd installed 30 years ago, still solid. I ran my hand across the surface, feeling the familiar grain of the wood. Upstairs, the master bedroom, empty closet, doors standing open. The bed frame was mine, the one I'd shared with my wife. Julia and Arnold had used their own mattress, and they'd taken it. I'd need to buy a new one, tomorrow's task. The guest room, completely bare. They'd used it as an office. Nothing of mine had ever been in here. The bathroom, their toiletries gone, leaving just the fixtures. I'd need towels, soap, shampoo, a shopping list forming in my head. I descended the stairs, each step creaking in the pattern I remembered. The house settling around me with familiar sounds. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the heating system clicking on, the frame shifting slightly as the evening cooled. I returned to the living room, lowered myself into my armchair. The leather was cool against my hands, the contours perfectly shaped to my body from decades of use. From here, I could see through the window to the street beyond. The streetlight cast familiar shadows across the floor. I should have felt exhausted. 2 days of planning, executing, confronting. 2 days of spending my life savings and dismantling my daughter's life. 2 days of cold focus and colder justice. Instead, I felt alert, clear, settled. There was more to do tomorrow. Administrative work, protecting my pension permanently, making sure Julia faced appropriate consequences for her fraud. But tonight, I allowed myself this moment, my house, my chair, my peace. I rose slowly, joints protesting slightly, 68 years making themselves known. Walked to the kitchen, poured water from the tap. The simple act of using my own kitchen in my own home. I drank slowly, leaning against the counter I'd installed when Julia was still in high school, back when she'd been someone I recognized. Tomorrow I would go to the bank, then Social Security. Make everything official, lock everything down, ensure this could never happen again. But tonight was mine, the first night of the rest of my life. I climbed the stairs to the master bedroom. The bare bed frame stood against the wall. I'd stored a sleeping bag in the garage 3 years ago, found it in a plastic bin, still dry and clean. Spread it across the frame, lay down on what had been my bed long before it was theirs. The ceiling above me showed familiar water stains from an old leak I'd fixed 15 years ago. Everything was exactly as I remembered, and nothing would ever be the same. I closed my eyes and slept without dreaming. Morning light woke me. No alarm, just my body recognizing dawn the way it had for decades. I showered in my bathroom, dressed in clothes from the small overnight bag I'd packed yesterday. Made instant coffee with water from my tap. At 8:30, I walked into my bank. The branch manager, a woman named Sharon Torres, looked up from her desk when I approached. "Mr. Scott, do you have an appointment? I need to discuss unauthorized changes to my account. It's urgent." Her expression shifted from polite to concerned. "Of course. Please, sit down." I laid out the timeline. Julia's announcement at dinner, the unauthorized transfer order, the dates, amounts, authorization codes she'd fabricated. My voice stayed calm, factual, letting the evidence speak. Sharon's face changed as she reviewed the documentation on her computer. "Mr. Scott, I'm seeing multiple irregularities here. These transfer authorizations. There's no record of you signing them in person or providing verbal authorization. This is highly irregular. My daughter works as a legal assistant. She has access to official forms and notary stamps. She created these documents without my knowledge or consent." Her fingers froze on the keyboard. "That's fraud, Mr. Scott. We take this very seriously." She picked up her phone, pressed a number. "Jim, I need you in my office immediately. We have a fraud situation." 30 minutes later, my pension was redirected back to my original account. All additional authorized users removed, transfer permissions revoked. My name only, my control only. "You'll need to file a police report," Sharon said, handing me a reference number for the bank's fraud investigation. "This will be referred to law enforcement." "I understand, thank you." From the bank, I drove to Leonard's office. He was waiting, documents prepared. Together, we went to the Social Security office downtown, a government building with fluorescent lighting and worn carpet and people waiting in plastic chairs. The investigator, a man named Chen, reviewed my case in a windowless cubicle. His computer screen reflected in his glasses as he scrolled through access logs. "Mr. Scott, I'm seeing multiple unauthorized accesses to your file from an account registered to Julia Adams, employee number 4782 at Brennan & Associates Legal. She modified your direct deposit information without proper authorization codes." He looked up at me. "This is a federal violation." Leonard leaned forward. "My client wants his benefits restored to proper routing. He's not interested in pressing criminal charges at this time, but he wants assurance this can't happen again." Chen nodded slowly. "Understood. We'll be terminating Ms. Adams' database access immediately and referring her case to our internal review board. Her employment will likely be terminated." He typed something, clicked his mouse. "Mr. Scott, your account is now secure. Your benefits will resume normal direct deposit to your personal account within 1 business cycle." We shook hands. Leonard drove me home. "That's it, Morton. You're protected now. Everything's locked down." "Thank you, Leonard, for everything. You did the hard part. I just filed the paperwork." The week that followed passed in a blur of ordinary tasks. I bought a mattress, had it delivered, stocked my refrigerator, mowed the lawn, unpacked boxes of my belongings I'd kept in storage, books, photos, the small accumulations of a lifetime. On the 8th day, I was walking back from checking my mailbox when Mrs. Patterson from 2 doors down intercepted me on the sidewalk. "Morton, have you heard?" Her voice carried that particular tone of someone with gossip to share. "Your daughter and that husband of hers moved to one of those cheap complexes on Riverside Drive. Someone saw Arnold working at the warehouse on 5th Street, loading trucks. Such a shame. Family troubles are always hard." I absorbed the information without reaction. "Thank you for letting me know, Eleanor. Will you be reaching out to her, to reconcile?" "No." She blinked, surprised by the finality. "Well, if you need anything, you know where to find me." I continued to my house, went inside, closed the door on her curiosity and her concern. That evening, I sat on my front porch with coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up to another day. Kids waiting for the school bus at the corner, neighbors leaving for work, the mockingbird that nested in the oak tree singing its territorial song. 68 years old. I'd spent 40 of them building something, a business, a home, a life, almost lost it all in a single conversation. But I didn't. Because I'd planned ahead, because I'd stayed sharp, because I'd remembered that mercy without wisdom is just weakness waiting to be exploited. I thought about Julia occasionally, not with anger anymore, but with a sort of distant sadness for what could have been if she'd chosen differently. But mostly I didn't think about her at all. She made her choice. I made mine. The difference was, I planned for consequences. She didn't. A mockingbird landed on my mailbox. I watched it preen, then launch itself toward the oak tree. The morning air was cool but warming, typical April in Austin. My street, my house, my life. 68 years old, 40 years building a life, 3 days reclaiming it, the rest of my days living it on my own terms. I smiled, just slightly, just for myself. Justice doesn't always come with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes it comes with coffee on your own porch, in your own house, in the quiet morning light. Sometimes justice is simply being exactly where you deserve to be. I finished my coffee, stood, stretched. My knees protested slightly, but they always did in the morning. I went inside to start my day. My house, my life, my terms. That was enough. That was everything. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.